You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Good Thursday morning and welcome in to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here, exclusively on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We do appreciate you tuning in and giving us a few minutes on this Thursday morning, the last Thursday and the last day in April as we move forward towards May and hopefully at least get forward here and look forward to a brighter future in May, hopefully, than we had the past really 6 weeks or so. Obviously, with the coronavirus pandemic just taking over the entire sports world and stopping it right in its midst. Adam Schefter tweeted earlier today, day 50 without sports, and it's definitely felt like a long 50 days. Hopefully, it's another or less than 50 days before we are back and talking about sports yet again. But we do appreciate you giving us a few minutes here on the Morning Boys as we're here till 11 a.m. on the East Coast. Have a great show for you planned for the next 2 hours. A lot to get to as MLB, we discussed a few weeks ago their Phoenix plan and how could MLB kind of return safely, right? Their idea was to basically move every team to Phoenix and quarantine them, basically have their own city cut off from the real world. That was not very feasible, but they actually have a new idea that is feasible. We'll get into that. And also, because the season's going to be different no matter what, right? Obviously, we're already into May starting tomorrow. The season's going to be shorter than normal, and it's going to be played under different conditions than normal. How can we make the game of baseball better? Not crazy different ideas, but what can we do, small things that could improve the game going forward that MLB could use as a testing ground? Since the season is already different in 2020, you can kind of implement and see, could this work? So we have two ideas that we can implement. I'd love to get your ideas as well as how we can make baseball better, aesthetically pleasing, game-wise, just anything that could help improve the game of baseball going forward. I'd love to hear your ideas, and we'll get into that. The NBA G League has been making a lot of waves and a lot of news these past few weeks that they have gotten a lot of big-time recruits that were supposed to go to college for a year. Now instead are going to the G League for a year to basically develop and learn under NBA coaches, NBA players, and have a different way of developing and getting ready for the draft. We'll discuss why that's a win for both the NBA and college basketball. It seemed like it wouldn't be a win for college basketball, but it is. We'll get into that. Jameis Winston signed with the Saints yesterday. Why Cam Newton now, he's the big quarterback that we don't have a home for yet. We don't know where he's going to go, why he should take a page out of Jameis Winston's book, and which teams are best for Cam. We'll discuss those. We have 4 teams there. And like I said earlier Monday, Eric Edholm of Yahoo Sports, NFL Draft Reporter, a great NFL Draft Reporter, will join us in about an hour and 15 minutes or so, right around 10:20 Eastern, to discuss the winners of the draft, the losers of the draft. And there's a question that I want to ask him about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, because ever since the Eagles made that head-scratching pick last week, drafting a quarterback in the second round as to be their backup, you hear a lot of rumblings out of Philadelphia and also nationally that, maybe Jalen Hurts, this would be a new wave of how teams are played and how the quarterback position is played. I want to discuss and ask Eric if the way he's scouting and the way he sees a fit with Jalen Hurts, could this be the wave of the future going on in the NFL, what the Eagles are doing? So we'll get into all of that, but I do want to start with a landmark, finally, a long overdue case that involves the NCAA and student athletes. As yesterday, the NCAA had a working group and finally supported and gave the green light to athletes profiting off of their name, image, and likeness. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be put into effect this year. They still have to go for a vote. It has to still be officially approved when it is on the voting table starting in January. So we're still a long ways away from this actually being implemented and put into service and actually put practically into the real world. But finally, it is long overdue. It is finally at least on the right path, and the wheels are turning here to allow athletes to be able to profit off of their name, off of their image, and off of their likeness. Now, it comes with complications, which we'll get into, because the NCAA, as you know, if you listen to the show, if you're a fan of college sports, you know they never make anything easy. The easiest slam dunk decision, they make difficult, they make hard for everyone involved. So, of course, nothing was going to change with this. But thankfully, they're going the right way. They're going in the right direction, and finally, because of political pressure from states, because of public pressure from fans just outcrying how ridiculous this is, finally, the NCAA is giving the green light and the A-OK for students to pursue their name, image, and likeness, pursue sponsorship, and basically branding opportunities while they're in school and allow them to make money just like regular students like you and me have been allowed to do when we're in college our entire 4-year career, if you stayed in college for 4 years. And so basically what students are allowed to do is that they can identify themselves going forward by their sport and their school. So Trevor Lawrence can say, I'm a quarterback for Clemson. I play football in whatever ad he wants to do. And this is the goal, at least. Again, it's not approved yet, but it is in the works. And basically, the NCAA is now looking into and moving forward with this idea that could be put into effect for the 2021-2022 academic calendar. So, basically looking forward, it could start next football season where teams can start recruiting and schools could start recruiting based upon, hey, look at where we are, look at this reach. This is what you can do to market yourself, and this is the opportunity. And this is good on many different levels. First of all, just straight up good for the athletes, right? They finally get their pay. 4 years for a lot of these kids, if you play football, 3 or 4 years if you play football, obviously 1 or 2 basketball, and the other Olympic sports, whether it's wrestling, whether it's baseball, hockey, it all depends on how long you're there and how the draft cycle plays out for yourself. But finally, you are allowed to get the credit and you're allowed to finally profit off of what you are doing on the field, right? Players in college are celebrities, especially now with TV deals the way they are. With the attention we pay to college football playoff, the attention that we pay to March Madness, these kids are becoming bigger celebrities than we've ever seen before in college. Especially now with social media, some of these kids have hundreds of thousands of followers, even just entering college. We saw Zion Williamson. He was a high school star. And now he's a guy who grew a celebrity in college. And now finally, kids, while they're in school, can actually benefit off of their own celebrity and make money off of just basically being themselves and playing well on the field, on the court, whatever. And the different avenues that the NCAA is allowing these athletes to pursue, social media sponsorships, which now we see obviously are bigger and more important than ever. You can get local business, national business. There's a lot of businesses, essentially, for the most part, it's pretty hard not to get approved by the NCAA to give these players some sort of sponsorship due. But, of course, we'll get into that in a second of why the NCAA makes it difficult. So finally, obviously, it's good for the athletes, right? They're getting paid. They're getting money that they actually deserve. They don't have to wait till they become a professional for these Fugazi rules so the NCAA can claim to be a nonprofit and basically don't have to pay taxes on all the money they make. So now the ones actually on the field, the ones bringing in all the money, are finally the ones actually going to get paid and see the benefit of it for sure. And not just having the kids benefit, which obviously is the first and foremost, most important thing. I think this will bring more parity to college sports, especially like what we've seen in college football of late. Especially if you're a college football fan, obviously the college football playoff is dominated by a few teams. Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and the SEC in general has always sent teams in and has had a huge impact on the playoff year in and year out. So you look at the landscape of college football the last 5-10 years or so, really since the playoff's been implemented, there's not a lot of teams that legitimately have a shot year in and year out to win a title, right? There's only, let's say, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. You could put Georgia in there. Oklahoma you could put in there. There's basically 5 or 6 teams, LSU for most years, you could throw in there, and they have a legitimate shot every year to win a national title. Some teams have to line it up right where, you have a Michigan, if things line up correctly. You have Oregon if things line up correctly to where, sure, they have a chance 1 or 2 years, but year in and year out, a lot of teams aren't competing to win a college football title. Now, how this can help, having players benefit off their name, image, likeness, how this can help create more parity is because now a lot of these mid-level schools can have better recruiting pitches. And twofold, here's why. One, you have schools near big cities. You have Rutgers, obviously very close to New York City. You have Northwestern, very close to Chicago. You have UCLA. Obviously, USC dominates the recruiting field in LA, but now you have UCLA close to the LA market. You have a lot of these schools that we'll call mid-level that aren't getting the blue-chip recruits year in and year out that have a chance because they can pitch to these recruits now, hey, listen, we're this close to LA. We're this close to New York. We're this close to Chicago. You want to build your brand. You want to get marketing. There's no better opportunity to do it than one of the biggest media markets in the world. You come to our school, we'll make sure that you're on billboards in LA and billboards in Chicago, and people in the area in these cities know who you are. If you all of a sudden now are the star of Northwestern, the star of UCLA, I'm not saying obviously these schools are going to be Chicago's all of a sudden going to bow down to Clayton Thorson when he was there, let's say, for example. But it helps. I mean, it's definitely an appealing pitch for these kids to say, listen, you can have your billboard in New York City or Chicago or LA and be the star and be the face of our program going forward. It definitely helps. And not to mention, too, you look at maybe, now all of a sudden playing time becomes more intriguing, right? You have so many big-time recruits, big chip recruits going to Alabama, going to Ohio State, going to Clemson every year, right? More times than not, a lot of these guys as freshmen and sophomores aren't playing. There's too many good players in front of them to where they're on they're buried on the depth chart, third and fourth string, and it takes until their sophomore, their junior, maybe even some until their senior year to get on the field and start. Well, it's tough to, build a brand for yourself if no one knows who you are. Or you could be a great Alabama quarterback, but if you're a great Alabama quarterback for 1 year, how much can that help your brand? How much can that help your marketing compared to, let's say, if you go to another mid-level school, but you're the star you're the star. All of a sudden now, if you're the face of a program, you're playing 2, 3, 4 years. That helps your brand. That helps grow your social media. And now all of a sudden, schools and sponsors can look at you and say, this is the face of Northwestern football. This is the face of Indiana football, UCLA football. That could help your brand. That could help your marketing. So now all of a sudden these mid-level schools have a more appealing recruiting pitch by saying you can play, get on the field earlier, which again, some of these kids can realize it only takes 1 year at a Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State to get drafted and go in the NFL. We see, especially with Alabama, we see it time and time again. They churn out these defensive studs who sit behind these great players for 2 or 3 years, play for a year or two, and then get drafted in the first round. But if these players, again, look at how marketing is done, especially social media-wise, if they want to build their following, maybe, it's smarter to go to a smaller school, but get immediate playing time. Help build who you are. Help be the face of a program that could, again, be better for your marketing pitch. So that's why I think it would give kids now second chances, or second thoughts, I should say, and maybe make it more appealing to go to a mid-level school that could promise them playing time right away, that can get them out in front of big-time cities. Get there and make them just a known, get their name out there, make them a known quantity. But, of course, like I said, the NCAA doesn't make it easy. I think more parity wants here. It's great for the kids, but like I said, the NCAA does not make it easy. Of course, they are dragging their feet when it comes to this. And I think I want to read you a quote here by Michael Drake, who's not only the president of Ohio State, he's one of the main guys with the NCAA in terms of spearheading this effort and commenting on it and going forward with it. And I just want to read you this quote that he said yesterday, because if you read it and listen to it, if you know anything about the NCAA, of course they're trying to take credit. Of course they're trying to see what's in it for them, right? They don't. The reason why they suppressed this so long and pushed for athletes not making money for so long is because they profit. If the money's not going to the athletes, that means the money's going to the schools and the money's going to them. That's it. The kids see 0 sense of it. And if anything, they get in trouble for it. Right? We saw Johnny Manziel get in trouble when he tried to have autograph signings. We get so many of these schools vacating wins, vacating Heisman trophies because kids are taking benefits that they rightly deserve that the NCAA doesn't want them to, grant them, which is just basic rights in this country, because the money is then leaving their pockets and going somewhere else, and they want that money to stay in their pockets. So again, Michael Drake, the president of Ohio State, huge board member of the NCAA, said this yesterday after, the NCAA gave the green light to go forward to basically try to pump the brakes and say, listen, the NCAA, we're trying here, but I hope you guys know once this goes into effect, it's going to make our jobs a lot harder, and college football and college sports, I should say, are going to go off the guard, or are going to go off the rails. And this is what he said, quote, "The evolving legal and legislative landscape around these issues not only could undermine college sports as part of a higher education, but also significantly limit the NCAA's ability to meet the needs of college athletes moving forward," end quote. So Michael Drake is telling you, if we allow players to profit off their name, image, and likeness, which they absolutely have the right for, which any student like myself and you who didn't play college sports can do, right? There's no rule that's saying a college student can't make money. If you're a great scientist, you can go work for whatever institution will hire you. It could be an internship, but they could pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the summertime, maybe do an internship while you're at school. There's no cap on that. There's no restriction saying you can't do that. It's only the athletes that are ones that aren't allowed to make money off of what they do in college. Now you have the president of Ohio State basically saying if we allow this to happen, if we allow players to get the money that they justly deserve, not only college sports could be undermined, it will significantly limit the NCAA's ability to meet the needs of college athletes going forward. What needs have they met, by the way? The NCAA, all they've done is drag their feet, make it harder for athletes to play the sport they love and do it the right way, but also get the right compensation. I mean, think about what it took for the NCAA to get to this point, right? It's not a coincidence that all of a sudden they're moving forward with it now. They kind of had an epiphany like, oh, this is the right thing to do. They were forced to do this. Let's not pretend like the NCAA is doing the athletes a favor here. They had no choice because guess what? All of these states are either in the process of or already have approved laws going forward that make it illegal for schools in the NCAA to punish athletes for taking money based on their name, image, and likeness. And what the NCAA is doing is they don't want it to be a state-by-state jurisdiction. They want it to have one kind of blanket rule. But trust me, they don't want this to happen at all. It took state governments to go forward, starting with California, to put laws into effect saying, if kids take money, they're fine. You can't punish them, NCAA. You can't make them ineligible. You can't take away their right to play the game because that money belongs to them. And, of course, the NCAA has to make it about themselves, has to make it difficult. All right, we'll do it, but just know that it's going to be a lot harder to meet the college athletes' needs. It's undermining college sports as we know it. So it's just, again, it's ridiculous, and the NCAA now is also begging for antitrust protection, which, if they get it, would be very, very disappointing from the federal government, which basically this is important because now all of a sudden, like I said, the NCAA not making it easy, they are going to try to make a cap of some sort. Now, they come out and say there's no cap. So right now, athletes can make as much money theoretically as they want. This is passed tomorrow or passed in January of 2021 and put into effect for the 2021-2022 academic calendar. Theoretically, athletes can make as much money as they want, right? So if Chick-fil-A wants to go to Trevor Lawrence and say, hey, Trevor, we will give you $1 million. You do this 30-second Chick-fil-A ad, say it's your, you eat it after every game. It's your favorite meal. The NCAA will look into that. Trevor Lawrence has to get approval that not only of the sponsor, because I could understand that for, you don't want an athlete sponsoring maybe a shady business or a business that doesn't align with the school's ethics and stuff like that. I understand, I could get behind the NCAA and the schools thinking you don't want your athletes sponsoring businesses and people that maybe aren't the best, right? But at the same time, the NCAA wants every transaction sent to them, and they are also bringing in, whether it's social media, businesses, I guess, or sponsors that are the ones that are doling out these social media sponsorships to basically say, what is market value for these sort of ads? So they're controlling the market, per se, and making sure that these sponsorships the athletes are going to get are on par with what the market says, which is, again, beyond backwards of what this country is about. If Chick-fil-A wants to give Trevor Lawrence $1 billion to be the sponsor and be the face of Chick-fil-A, why should Trevor Lawrence be punished for that if Chick-fil-A wants to do it, if they're willingly giving him $1 billion? Sure, it's above market value. Sure, it's probably ridiculous to pay one person that much money to be the face of your company. But guess what? It's Chick-fil-A's right to do it, or any company's right to do it. The NCAA, again, is trying to hold the athlete's hand and look out for themselves, but more importantly, they're just trying to keep as much money in their own pockets as possible. So don't be fooled. This is not a time to pat the NCAA on the back. It's not a time to praise them for saying they're finally doing the right thing for these athletes. They were forced to do it. And now they're trying to implement guardrails, which is a hot key phrase that they've been saying now a lot recently, to make sure these athletes are getting market deals and nothing more. So it is a great day for college sports for sure yesterday. It's finally going forward and finally going, in the future, these athletes will be paid the money they are going to get, which I think will only help college sports. Right? You see now, a lot of these players, we'll get into a little bit, a lot of these big-time recruits for basketball are going to the G League and getting paid money and bypassing college sports. They're bypassing playing a year or two in college, and the college basketball is losing that talent because you can get paid to do what you do. You can get paid to play basketball. Now, I'm saying this, this name, image, and likeness is going to be the reason and kind of kill what the G League is trying to do, because they could still pay a lot more than what these players could get. but it's finally at least a step in the right direction, and finally good for these athletes that they are getting their just due and just pay going forward. So let's get your thoughts. This is obviously it's a first right step for athletes, and these are their just rights. They absolutely deserve to get the money that they are bringing in. But I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like, should there be a cap? Do you agree with the NCAA and that maybe we shouldn't? Some of these athletes shouldn't be getting the money or as much money as possible, right? I mean, there are theoretically recruiting concerns now from the NCAA that all of a sudden these boosters are going to just hide behind some business and say, oh, yeah, Trevor, we'll give you $1 billion. Come sponsor this local restaurant. Obviously, that's a little sketchy. But, again, it's also their right for if they want, if these restaurants, these local businesses want to pay all this money to the star football player, the star wrestler, the star baseball player, they have the right to. It's their money. They can spend it how they want. So let's get your thoughts. Should there be a cap for the name, image, and likeness of college sports going forward? Or, again, should there be the right to get as much money as possible? It's a free country. It's a capitalist country, more importantly. How can we make sure that the players are getting as much money as possible? So get your thoughts on the NCAA and their decision, again, the right decision going forward to allow players to profit off their name, image, and likeness. And when we come back, so, again, Bob Nightingale of USA Today put out a report, a new plan of MLB and how they could resume the season. It's very feasible. It's very logical. So give you that plan. And also, like I said, how can we change baseball for the better? Small, subtle changes. I have two that I think could be implemented in a test year, which really 2020 is, to make the game better going forward. So I'd love to hear your thoughts either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. We'll get your thoughts, and we'll discuss how baseball can be improved during the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We are talking about the NCAA and their landmark decision by them to go forward and allow students to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. This is huge because this is something the NCAA is trying to suppress and try to avoid for basically their entire existence, essentially. They've always looked out for themselves, always tried to get as much money in their own pockets as possible while exploiting the college athletes that play all these sports and basically are providing free labor for this organization. So it's very good, finally, that moving forward, kids are going to be allowed to profit off their name, image, and likeness and get as much money that they deserve as possible, hopefully starting next fall in 2021, heading into the 2022 season, which will change the landscape of college sports and also recruiting as well. I think it'll definitely bring some parity to college sports, and I think it'll only be a benefit to the sports overall and to the kids overall. So I'm all in favor of it, and I love it for sure going forward. Love to get your thoughts on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, on Twitter, WWSRN_radio, and very exciting as well, if you are a fan of the Worldwide Sports Radio Network, we now have everything, all of our content, all of the writing we do, all the shows that we do in one centralized location. We have launched an app. We've talked about it the last few weeks. It is live. If you're on iOS and iPhone, if you type in WWSRN in the App Store, boom, right there. You can find it and download it. If you're on Android, it's Worldwide Sports Radio Network. So, again, WWSRN on iPhone and Android, Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Very excited that this app is up and running. So all the articles that we write, all of the shows that we do, all the YouTube clips that our great producer, Speedy Petey, cuts up each and every show is all in one centralized location right there on the app. So you don't have to worry about going to Facebook for the show and worldwidesportsradionetwork.com to read all the articles and YouTube to find, if you missed a clip from the show, you want to listen back, you can go there. Everything is one spot. All the YouTube clips, all the shows, all the articles, one spot. Again, WWSRN on iOS, Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Android. Very, very excited that the app is launched and up and running. So you can do it right now if you want, for sure. And we are up and running. So very cool. Great job by our great leader, Errol Marks, for putting that all together. I know it took a lot of time to finally get the app running, but it is up and running, and hopefully you enjoy it. Give us also your thoughts if it can be improved at all, what you like about it. But the app is up and running for sure. So again, if you do have any comments on the NCAA and allowing players to benefit off their name, image, and likeness, you can do it on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or Twitter, WWSRN_radio. Charlie Rose, a big fan of the show and a big fan of Worldwide Sports Radio Network. So appreciate you listening, Charlie. He asks the most important question I did not get to about the NCAA football game. EA Sports, obviously, that's a great game. The last game was produced back in 2014. And the reason why it was stopped is because essentially the NCAA and O'Bannon took the NCAA to court saying you can't use these players' names if they aren't getting paid for it, right? I mean, they didn't have the names on the back of their jerseys, but we knew number 3 at Florida State back in 2014 was Jameis Winston. So they got a kind of a way around it by saying QB number 3 without putting the names. And that's how they got away with it for so long, for not paying these athletes to be in the game. And once that lawsuit went to court, boom, the NCAA dropped and stopped making the game. So he asks, going forward, does this mean that the game can come back? Right now that players are getting paid for their name, image, and likeness, does this mean EA Sports college football will be back and we can play it next year or 2 years from now? Right now, Charlie, I hate to tell you, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And here's why. The NCAA, and I talked about it yesterday as well. In order to have the video games produced, whether it's NCAA March Madness or, again, NCAA football, you need a group licensing agreement. That's how Madden does it. That's how MLB The Show does it. NBA 2K. It's a group licensing venture. So basically saying, all right, if we can use your name, use your team, we're going to put basically a joint, everyone's going to get this X amount of dollars. And they basically negotiate over the group. We'll give, EA Sports will give the group, let's say, $1 million, split it up between every player. Something like that. Now, because there's no players association in college sports, they can't make that the negotiation. I guess theoretically they could discuss and make a deal with each individual player, which is a possibility for sure going forward. But at least at the moment, the NCAA shot down any hope of a video game coming back because there is no group licensing. They won't even consider a group licensing agreement. So if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, we will not get college football or college basketball video games back anytime soon. That doesn't mean it can't happen. And again, yesterday was the NCAA finally recognizing that this is an issue. And yes, we will agree to move forward with it and put it to a vote in January. There still has to be basically, for their word, not mine, guardrails put in. There still has to be some sort of write-up that basically say this is outline of this is how it's going to work, which has yet to happen. It was just basically suggestions that they took into consideration and now are going to consider going forward. So they have now April 30th until sometime in January of 2021 to actually draft a bill, draft these rules and regulations, and then put them to a vote, which should definitely be approved and go forward. But from this time until then, it's going to be a lot of collaborating, a lot of discussions about how can we make this, obviously profitable for both the athletes, but also profitable for the NCAA as well, which is what they do best. We do have some breaking news here. We'll get to MLB in just a second here, but we do have some breaking news from Adam Schefter that Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton was cut just this morning, which is actually pretty surprising. Obviously, the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow number 1 overall in this recent draft, so he's going to be the guy going forward. He is the future in Cincinnati. So Andy Dalton's days were already numbered. He was benched last year for Ryan Finley. So, again, Andy Dalton was one of those hot names on the trading block this offseason because it was known the Bengals were drafting Joe Burrow, and that means Andy Dalton is kind of out of luck there, out of a job. I'm surprised they cut him because I figured some team would give up some sort of draft capital or player to have him on their team. But as we can see, this has been a really opposite year for the most part when it comes to the quarterback position. So many times in the NFL, we've seen teams desperate for quarterback play, need someone, and they end up overpaying an average or even below average player that shows the promise to be their guy going forward, and most of the time they don't deliver. That's what we've seen year in and year out for the most part. Desperate teams, overdrafting quarterbacks, paying quarterbacks too much money, and reaching on guys, hoping they can be the guy that most likely they end up turning out to be the guy. And it's interesting because now, and we'll get to Cam Newton in a little bit here, but now there's not enough room. For the most part, there used to be too many chairs, or I should say, too many chairs and not enough quarterbacks to fit in those chairs in a game of musical chairs. Now there's too many players, there's too many quarterbacks, not enough chairs. We're going to talk about Cam Newton in a little bit. There's not a lot of obvious landing spots for a lot of these veteran quarterbacks looking to play. And maybe Andy Dalton can go the backup route, sit behind someone for a year or two, and try to rejuvenate his career and get back on the free agency market. And maybe that's why they cut him. But I'm surprised that the Bengals didn't at least try to get some sort of compensation for Andy Dalton. 'Cause I think Andy Dalton can still play. I mean, he's not an elite quarterback by any stretch, but he's definitely a competent quarterback. He's a guy that if your starter goes down, he's the guy, the Eagles would have profited greatly off of. If you have an injury-riddled quarterback or questions about your quarterback's durability, and you're a team like the Eagles who are in a position to win and are in a position to try to win a Super Bowl, you saw it already with what a backup quarterback can do and come in and play well. That would have been a great guy if you bring in Andy Dalton and Carson Wentz goes down for 2 or 3 games and you need him in the playoff game again. He could be your guy. And Sal Paontoni of ESPN yesterday had just a mind-blowing stat that I didn't even honestly consider, but it makes sense. Carson Wentz, under Doug Peterson in that era, the Eagles have played in 6 playoff games. You know how many snaps Carson Wentz has played in those 6 playoff games? 6. 6. Couldn't believe that. It makes sense. They play 3 games in the Super Bowl run, all-star by Nick Foles. The next year they go back to the playoffs. They go to the divisional round, lose to the Saints. Nick Foles started both of those playoff games. And this past playoff game, past year in the wild card against the Seahawks, Carson Wentz goes out in the first quarter with a concussion. 6 snaps out of 6 playoff games for Carson Wentz in the Doug Peterson era. So, yeah, they could benefit from a competent backup quarterback that could come in and make plays winning games. Andy Dalton would be perfect. Perfect at Philadelphia. I'm not sure if that's going to, I guess now it could happen money-wise because he's a free agent. But I'm surprised that at least the Bengals didn't get something and didn't trade him. But that's a great quarterback out there. And that gets now even harder for Ken Newton to find a job, which we'll get into him in just a little bit. But I do want to get to MLB, so we'll circle back to Andy Dalton in a little bit when we discuss Cam Newton and where his landing spot should be. Major League Baseball, if you missed it yesterday, or 2 days ago now at this point, Bob Nightingale put a story out with USA Today releasing the latest idea and latest plan for MLB for when they could resume games and how it could resume. So the plan right now for MLB, they could resume, and they're thinking, and you read, MLB is very positive and really starting to get optimistic that a season is going to be played and a legitimate season is going to be played. The hope is that baseball could return sometime between late June and at latest July 2nd. So somewhere in that week or 10-day gap, baseball will return. So let's just say 2 months from now, right? It's April 30th. Let's say baseball could resume in about 2 months. With that, if that's the case, MLB believes they could fit in 100 games. Go from, again, late June, early July, all the way through October. Then have playoff games and the World Series played in neutral sites in warm weather to make sure that obviously, winter weather affects their playoff games. Now, this is where the change comes in. This is where it could be radical. The plan is to have 3 divisions, 10 teams each division, but 3 divisions based on geography alone. So the AL and NL for this season thrown out the window. The AL East, NL East, AL West, NL West, all gone this year. 3 divisions, 10 teams per division, all based on geographic location. You would only play the teams in your division. And there is hope eventually that maybe if the season has to start in, let's say, the 3 states that are thrown out there, Florida, Texas, and California, which has been a plan, maybe by August or September, a lot of these teams can go back to their home ballparks, and we can actually have games played in home ballparks without fans. And that is a hope, and that is a plan, at least right now, that MLB is thinking about and hopefully trying to implement. So again, 100 games, 3 divisions, 10 teams per division based on geographic location alone. So no leagues, no AL, no NL, just 3 divisions, 10 teams mixed in AL and NL together. Obviously, there are prerequisites that are very important. Testing has to be widely available to the public. Right now, it is not. Again, 2 months from now, we don't know what the landscape is going to be. A month from now, we don't even think baseball is going to happen, probably. And this Arizona plan seemed the only way baseball could return. Now, obviously, we're getting to the stage where testing is improving. We see the numbers starting to drop. So now there's more hope that baseball could be played, and it could be played actually in teams' home ballparks. So we don't know what 2 months is going to look like, but obviously that is a major prerequisite. Testing has to be widely available to the public, so myself and you and your family can get a test just as easily as baseball players could get a test. Now, obviously, they work with medical experts. They have to have approval and sign off on this plan. So MLB is taking the right precautions and the smart steps in order to make sure that the season goes off without a hitch, and more importantly, once the season resumes, it won't have to stop again. Right? We already saw that in Japan. They tried to resume their season, had to stop because players came down with the coronavirus. And now MLB does not want that, which I think is very smart. So again, those are really two prerequisites. But I'm curious because now, again, like I said, when you're playing a short season, that's 100 games. When you're having 3 divisions, and those divisions will be East, Central, and West. In the East Division, you have the Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, Nationals, Orioles, Phillies, Pirates, Blue Jays, Rays, and Marlins. So every team on the East Coast. Again, AL and NL mixed together. You still preserve, Mets-Yankees rivalry, Yankees-Red Sox rivalry, Mets-Phillies, Mets-Nationals. You still have a lot of those rivalries set and kept together. Central, you have the Cubs, White Sox, Brewers, Cardinals, Royals, Reds, Indians, Twins, Braves, and Tigers. Then out West, obviously, you have everyone else, Dodgers, Angels, Giants, A's, Padres, Diamondbacks, Rockies, the Rangers, Astros, and Mariners. So like I said, 3 divisions, 10 teams, all mixed and all based on geographic location only. So things are going to be a lot different in 2020 than any normal season. This is essentially a testing ground and a free trial run for MLB this season with all the changes that are already going to happen just to play baseball. So this got me thinking, what changes could we make that MLB can implement this year that would make the game better? And in Bob Nightingale's story, he quoted one MLB executive who said this, quote, "This is going to be a season like we've never seen," end quote. So everyone is aware this is going to be very different. So why not take this opportunity to implement maybe a change or 2 or 3 that you were toiling with, thinking about, but now you can implement in 2020 since it's already a test year, since it's already different, and see if it actually works in the real life without maybe getting the scrutiny or getting players and fans upset as you would normally if a year was business as usual, right? So I'm curious. I have 2 ideas. Let's get your ideas. You can either comment on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, throw us a tweet at WWSRN_radio, or my personal Twitter handle, Ryan_Hickey, 3. What changes would you put in MLB this year in 2020 as an experiment that could really help the game in the long term? Maybe you are a fan of the 3-batter rule that's going to be implemented this year, where a reliever coming in has to face a minimum of 3 batters before a pitching change is made, right? Maybe you like that rule. You want to see it expanded to a full inning. Whatever reliever comes in, you have to stay in that inning. You have to keep that reliever in the full inning. Maybe you hate the DH or you love DH. This is the time to where small changes could be put in place to help the game better. I'm not a radical change guy. I like baseball the way it is. So that my 2 changes and suggestions aren't really extreme for the most part and don't change the way the game of baseball that we see it as is. So at least mine, the first one I would do, I honestly, a lot of AL fans are going to hate this. I would remove the DH. I hate the designated hitter in the AL. I hate even more that baseball is the only league where there are different rules for each conference and each league. I hate how the AL has one set of rules, the NL has one set of rules, where no other sport has that. The NFC and the AFC play by the same rules. Eastern Conference and the Western Conference play by the same rules. Baseball is the only one that has different leagues based on the league you play, or different rules, based upon the league you play in. I hate it. Everyone is pushing for the DH in the NL. On the opposite, take it away, take it out of the NL, take it out of the AL. A few reasons. One, I wholesalely believe this, and I can't be convinced otherwise. It provides more strategy for managers. Nowadays, managers are having less and less responsibilities. Everything's being taken out of their hands. The front office now is the one making the lineup. Analytics department is determining who's playing, which pitchers should come in this situation, and so on. The managers basically don't decide anything anymore. They just listen to what the front office says. So now, if you take the DH out, it adds more strategy because you have to figure out if a pitcher has to come up and hit in the 7th inning, and he's due up second, and he's pitching great, it's a 1-run game. Do you pinch hit and go for another run, or do you keep him in there because he's pitching so well? How do you bring in a reliever in? If you're in a tough spot here with the pitcher up second, and it's a big spot, you need to bring a reliever in, do you bring him in knowing that, you might have to either pinch hit for him or have him bat with a runner in score position? Taking the DH out of the game provides more strategy for managers and makes them think and puts, again, it harder on each team and each manager, makes them think more, provides more options. I'm all about that. I love the gameplay. I love the strategy. It involves more for the managers. I'm all for removing the DH. And not to mention, too, pitchers are athletes. Let's not pretend like, there are these machines that only know how to throw and can't do anything else. They're athletes. We're seeing these pitchers come in bigger, faster, stronger. And not to mention, too, there's a big complaint, pitchers don't hit, throughout, their entire career. Why now all of a sudden from high school, from travel ball to little league to college ball to the minor leagues, pitchers never hit? Why all of a sudden now we're making them hit? Well, you take the DH away. There's no reason for the minor leagues, for high school, for college, for travel baseball, for these teams to have DHs. There's no reason. The reason why they have it is because it's in the major leagues now. If pitchers are going to be brought up hitting anyway, right? If that's just part of their game, guess what? They're going to learn how to hit. They're going to be good at it, and they're going to not be fazed by it by the time they get up to the plate in the majors. You take the DH away, it takes the DH away at every baseball level going forward. Now pitchers will be hitting in high school and college, used to it, which will improve the game. And I wonder, this is just a complete speculation and complete guess, but I wonder, because we're seeing so many pitchers have arm injuries, and especially getting Tommy John at a rate more than we've ever seen before. I understand pitchers are throwing harder, which is putting more stress on the elbow and the pitching arm, which is causing more injuries. I wonder if you are causing pitchers to focus on something else other than pitching, because now, especially with specialization, these kids are pitching in high school and not doing anything else. If you force them to hit, if you force them maybe, that'll even allow them to play other positions outside of pitching. I wonder if that could help save arm injuries, because now all of a sudden, if you're a pitcher that's to hit, you're still focusing on hitting. Obviously, you're still focusing on pitching. That's the main priority. But you're still hitting. You're still in the cage taking cuts. You're still working on your swing. I wonder if that will help reduce arm injuries going forward. It's a complete guess by me. But I wonder if now that if you force pitchers to kind of work on something else, focus on something else outside of just pitching, if that maybe that will save their arm going forward, and we'll see less arm injuries once these players get to the minors and the major leagues. So I've removed the DH. I think it improves strategy. These pitchers are athletes. It'll take away the DH going forward as these players come up, and I think it'll only be better for the game and maybe prevent future arm injuries from happening. And the other thing I would do, I would eliminate coaches' challenges. Nothing drives me more crazy as a fan now than waiting around 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes as the manager is sitting on top of the dugout with his hand up to the umpire, holding up play to see if he should challenge a play or not. Drives me insane. Now, we're just waiting around. Is the guy safe on first base? Is he out? Should we change it? No other sport allows coaches to basically take their time in making a decision to challenge or not, right? Football, you have until the next play is snapped. Obviously, if you're an offense and you want to review, you can take your time a little bit. But if the other team makes a judgment or a quick, a questionable call, let's say, well, the other team's hurrying up. You don't have that much time to decide whether you want to challenge or not. It's a bang-bang decision. Baseball should be the same. And how you do that, eliminate coaches' challenges. Have a sky judge review everything. Fair, foul, out, safe. And have him buzz down to the umpires if they want to take a second look. Sort of what college football does. Right? There's no challenges in college football. Everything's reviewed by a sky judge. And if they want a second look, they buzz down. So this would eliminate coaches waiting around, calling, someone in the video room to say, should we challenge it? Was it fair? Is it a home run? Was he out? Was he safe? It eliminates that waiting around. And not to mention, too, we talked about this when we talked about the Red Sox punishment. Eliminating coaches' challenges also eliminates the need of a video replay room. Right? These replay rooms were built and put in right next to the dugout so coaches and managers can discuss with whoever their video coordinator is to see what's going, should they challenge or not. That's mostly the main reason for it. A quick form of communication to say, should we replay it? Yes or no? Are we in or are we out? Let's do it. Now, if you take away that reason to have a video replay room coordinator, you basically eliminate the need of a replay room, which means less cameras, less avenues for players to cheat. Coming off of the Astros scandal, coming off of the Red Sox scandal, MLB has to get this right. Rob Manfred didn't punish players, which I thought was the right thing, but going forward, you have to make sure this does not happen again. Part of that, doing that, is just taking the temptation away. Take away one avenue of cheating. I think eliminating the coaches' challenges, again, eliminates the need of a replay room going forward, and not just, if you take that away, that's one less avenue for players to cheat. So that's what I would do. I would take away the DH, and I would eliminate coaches' challenges, and my two things that I think MLB should put into the 2020 season to make the game better, make the game more exciting, make the game move quicker, and be a good testing ground to see if it works or not. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe the DH is a colossal disaster. Maybe both teams need it. I disagree wholeheartedly, but maybe, once we see it in action, that will prove me wrong. Maybe it'll prove me right. Maybe this is, AL fans will get used to seeing pitchers hit and be more exciting. And I think just the coach challenge is just so frustrating, such a waste of time, especially now with MLB so dead set on trying to make the game as quick as possible. Take away the coach's challenges. They're just waste of time. No one enjoys sitting around wasting a minute or so. I think that'll be benefit for the game. So if you have any thoughts, what would you do to change the game of baseball? This is a testing ground. An MLB executive already said this is going to be a year like we've never seen. So it's going to be different. We're going to have AL and NL teams mixed together. Only 3 divisions, no more leagues. And you play teams that are geographically close to you. So it's going to be very different. What ideas would you suggest to MLB to change the game for the better and make it more enjoyable in the long run that we can use this year as a testing ground for to see if it works or not? We'd love to get your thoughts either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You can type below where the show is. If you're on Twitter and watching on Periscope, you want to tweet in a suggestion at WWSRN_radio. Or if you want to tweet myself, Ryan_Hickey and the number 3. We'll read all those comments when we come back to the show. And also when we come back, the G League has been recruiting a lot of big-time talent now to come and train with them instead of going to the college route. We'll discuss why it's good for the NBA. It's also good for college basketball. We'll discuss that when we come back on The Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
And welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. If you're just tuning in, we appreciate you listening. Hopefully you are staying safe, staying sane out there for sure, and we are providing some sort of entertainment at least for the next hour or so as we go to the top of the hour, 11 o'clock on the East Coast. We have Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports, a great NFL draft reporter, coming on in just about 20 minutes to discuss some winners and losers. And I really want to discuss with Eric as well the future of the NFL. I think maybe the Jalen Hurts pick hinted at that. We'll get Eric's thoughts as well. But if you're just tuning in, first of all, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. It is the Morning Boys, Ryan Hickey here. But also, that means you missed out on our great news we discussed earlier in the hour, which is that our app is finally here. So if you're a fan of the Worldwide Sports Radio Network and you want everything in one centralized location, that is finally here for you. If you type in WWSRN on iOS or Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Android, it's WWSRN if you have an iPhone, or if you're on Android Worldwide Sports Radio Network, we are on, or we have an app. So every show we do, every article we write, all the YouTube clips that our great producer Speedy Petey cuts up, everything is in one centralized location. So all you got to do is open the app. You can watch the show. You can listen to the show. You can read all the articles we write, watch clips on YouTube that you missed and you want to circle back upon. Everything that you need is at the touch of your finger, and you don't have to worry about going to Facebook for one, Twitter for another, Periscope for one thing, WorldwideSportsRadioNetwork.com. Everything's in one centralized location, and that is on the app. So we highly suggest you download that and get all of your Morning Boys content, all of the content Errol Marks does at nighttime, all his great shows, everything that the Worldwide Sports Radio Network does is at the tip of a finger, a touch, and all on the app. So very excited for that, and as going forward, we are. This has been a long plan in the works for sure. Been a few months. So credit to Errol for putting that all together. And like I said, very exciting. So WWSRN on iOS or Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Android for sure. So we'll get to the G League in a little bit here. But since the Andy Dalton news came that he was just cut by the Bengals, I want to kind of get to this because now, again, there's more veteran quarterbacks on the market than there are jobs. We saw Jameis Winston, his deal he just signed with the Saints, coming off a guy who threw 30 interceptions for sure, had a lot of downs, but also had a lot of ups, a lot of positives. He threw 33 touchdowns. So the talent is there for sure. It's his decision-making that obviously is questionable. And part of that decision-making didn't help him get a job. And also part of it is there's just not a lot of jobs to be had. This is the first year that we've seen there are more quarterbacks than there are jobs. I've seen so many times teams reach on quarterbacks so desperate that they end up overpaying an average quarterback hoping he's going to be above average, or even a below average quarterback hoping he can be at least average, and most of the time he doesn't live up to it. This is the first time if you're playing a musical chairs game. I don't know why I'm using that analogy, by the way. That's the second time I'm using a musical chairs analogy with this, but I think that's the one that fits the most, actually. There are too many quarterbacks than there are chairs. And now you throw Andy Dalton into that mix as well. So I was going to discuss leading up to it until about 20 minutes ago when this news broke about where does Cam Newton end up? Because now, again, we saw Jameis sign a one-year deal, $1.1 million, by the way. He signed for peanuts. And he was basically just happy to get a deal as he signed with the Saints. What does that mean for Cam Newton? And now also, what does that mean for Andy Dalton? Because you look around, there is no starting job that's open right now. And again, Jameis Winston saw that, and now that's where he signed to be a backup in New Orleans. But you look around the league, there's even not many backup spots. We'll get into that in a second, but I think it's very smart also with what Jameis did, signing that deal. I want to get at him for just a quick second here. Because Jameis Winston, he's a reclamation project. He needs basically a year to kind of get his thoughts together, see how a consummate pro does it in Drew Brees, and almost take the route of Teddy Bridgewater, which worked out great. Now, obviously, Teddy Bridgewater is a little different because injuries and that gruesome injury he had in Minnesota was what derailed his career. He goes down to New Orleans, backs up Drew Brees for 2 years, plays well when he's called upon, and he ends up signing us the 3-year, $63 million deal with the Panthers. I think Jameis Winston, who has the talent, and again, the biggest question mark for him is decision-making. I think he can, kind of go the same way as Teddy Bridgewater and reassess the QB market next year when teams like the Bears, who already said they're not going to give Mitchell Trubisky a fifth-year option, I think could be looking for a new guy or could be looking for a guy. They have already, I know they traded for Nick Foles. I don't trust Nick Foles. I really don't. And Jameis Winston has 10 times the talent that Nick Foles does. So this could be a year where where Jameis gets things right, learns from a pro, gets in that offense with Sean Payton, which you see a lot of quarterbacks have success in, and then resurface next year, either maybe to have that Saints job. Who knows? I don't think Drew Brees is going to come back after this year. I think this is the final hurrah. So that'll be a job that's open. But smart for Jameis, and now it's going to be, Cam Newton and Andy Dalton are going to have to follow the same suit that Jameis Winston did. Put your pride aside. I'm sure they both believe that they can be starting quarterbacks. It's time to follow the same path, because right now, going the backup route in 2020 is the best way they could become a starter again in 2021. So I had, and we'll discuss this with Andy Dalton too, but I had 4 teams lined up for Cam Newton I think he would fit perfectly in. We can go for a year, sit behind the starter, get healthy, first of all. That's his biggest question. Get healthy again, and maybe, if called upon, play well and garner up some interest, because right now he's getting 0 interest. And so I had 4 teams. One of them is the Steelers. You look at the Steelers, their backup quarterbacks stink. Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, they played the entire year last year, essentially. Ben played, I think a game and a half. Didn't last too long. And the reason why this would be smart for, I think this would be a good fit for Andy Dalton too, but also Cam Newton, is because Big Ben doesn't mentor young quarterbacks. He actually hates young quarterbacks. When Mason Rudolph was drafted, he basically said, I don't know why they drafted this quarterback. He's going to basically have to learn on his own. I was hoping to get a weapon. He's not going to be all of a sudden happy-go-lucky and teach this young quarterback who's trying to take his job how to succeed in the NFL. So this is a chance where, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger doesn't stay healthy too often. He's played 1 full season in the last 5 years. So he's going to get dinged up. He's going to miss some games. Coming off that elbow injury, we have no clue how long his body's going to last. You go to Pittsburgh, let your body heal a little bit, and guess what? If Big Ben gets hurt, which he's done, again, for the last 5 years, he hasn't played a full season, you can get on the field for a game, 2, maybe an extended stretch, and try to get your career back on the right track. I think that'd be great for both Andy Dalton and Cam Newton. Another team, a team that knows the backup route well, the Tennessee Titans. This is why I love it for Cam Newton especially, because the Titans run a physical offense that is catered on the run game and play action, which fits into Cam Newton's needs perfectly. The play action pass in Tennessee is very effective. They have Derrick Henry on the franchise tag, so they're going to run the ball and run it a lot. You saw it last year. That's how they made it to the AFC title game. Play physical defense and run the ball down your throat. So I think that will benefit Cam the most because he's not being put in harm's way. He's being able to pass off of the play action game, which I think is very beneficial for him. And not to mention, too, the Titans and Ryan Tannehill know the backup route very well. Ryan Tannehill was traded for last year to back up Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota struggles. Ryan Tannehill comes in, shot of life into that Titans offense, and then again they make a run to the AFC title game. Do I trust Ryan Tannehill long term? I do not. I thought it was the wrong move for the Titans to give Tannehill an extension. I would have went the Tom Brady route personally. But now, if you bring in Cam Newton, even for just a year, you have insurance that in case Ryan Tannehill was a flash in the pan, a one-hit wonder, or injured, because let's not forget in Miami, he couldn't even stay on the field. He got hurt every year. He can be a guy you can bring in and at least continue to run your offense, and the offense fits what Cam does well and really what Cam needs. He can't be running around behind a bad offensive line, taking massive hits. He needs a physical offense that runs the ball first, and he can use that play action game effectively going forward and help save him, hopefully, some hits on his body, because God knows we need that. I think the Titans would be a very perfect fit for Cam Newton, especially. How about the Vikings, too, going to the NFC? There's another team that's dedicated to running the ball first, using the play action game. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is a starter. There's no controversy there. So bring Cam Newton. I don't think that rocks the boat as much as you would if you bring Cam Newton in for a young team. Because that's another thing, too. Right? A lot of people want to speculate that, Cam Newton should go to the Patriots. Look at their quarterback situation. Jarrett Stidham stinks. He'd be great for the Patriots. He's still really good. You're not bringing in Cam Newton if you have a young quarterback you're trying to figure out and trying to develop. You're not bringing Cam Newton into New York, either the Jets or the Giants. You're not bringing Cam Newton into the Browns. You're not bringing Cam Newton into any situation where a young quarterback is either trying to figure it out or has a stranglehold on the team. Because the last thing you want to do is bring a distraction in. That's the one thing we don't know about Cam. How will he do when the limelight's not on him, when he is not the guy? He was the guy his entire career in Carolina. Now, wherever he goes, he's going to be the backup, which means he's not going to do his press conferences, which means if he still tries to dress up all fancy, guess what? No one's talking to him after the game. I think that it's better to bring in Cam to a veteran-laden team, especially a veteran quarterback room, where they can handle the distraction and there won't be much controversy. Because God knows if you bring him into New York with the Jets, let's say, in a big year for Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold struggles, all you're going to be hearing about is questions about, should Cam Newton play? Let's get Cam Newton in there. That's not how exactly you build confidence for a young quarterback that you still hope could be your franchise guy. So the Vikings think could be another good fit, because you look at who they have now. They have Sean Mannion, Jake Browning. Yuck. You have an established veteran guy in Kirk Cousins there who has a stranglehold on the job, but also the offense fits Cam's needs. So I think that would be a very solid place to bring in Cam. Not to mention, too, all four of these teams, Steelers, Titans, Vikings, and I'm about to talk about the Seahawks in a moment, you need a reason to bring Cam in, right? If you're going to be a bad team, let's say like the Jaguars, there's no reason to bring Cam in because you're not trying to win. You're trying to figure out what you have in your young quarterback. He's a great insurance policy for these teams that are built to win a Super Bowl or trying to win a Super Bowl. You bring him in as an insurance policy to where if your starter gets hurt, your season's not over. If Kirk Cousins goes down, their season's over. Jake Browning or Sean Mannion aren't coming in and leading the Vikings to the playoffs. If Russell Wilson gets hurt, which we'll talk about the Seahawks here, but first of all, there's zero backup on their depth chart. So whoever they bring in is not going to lead the Seahawks to the playoffs. But if you bring Cam Newton in to Seattle, obviously Russell Wilson is the unquestioned starter. We have a heavy run scheme with a solid offensive line that's improving. And you look at his skill set, Russell Wilson is a similar, smaller Cam Newton. Both mobile, both make plays with their feet. Russell does a way better job of avoiding hits and not taking abuse. But it's a similar offense. It's a similar scheme. And again, not to mention, when it's run first and you're using the play action to help the quarterback, it is less abuse that Cam Newton has to take, and it'll open the throwing lanes better for him to make plays and have success. So you're not bringing Cam in to mentor young quarterbacks. I would be nervous that how that dynamic would work if you'd actually try to help the young quarterback as much as trying to take his job. So all four of these teams I laid out, the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Titans, and the Steelers, I think are four spots that would be perfect, that are trying to make the playoffs, that the starter, for the most part, has some injury concerns, especially with the Steelers and the Titans. All four fit a pretty good offense that Cam can come in and adapt and play well under. And all four are trying to win the Super Bowl. All four are trying to make a run. You're bringing him in as the insurance policy, as your Nick Foles to Carson Wentz. You're not bringing him into a young quarterback room to have him mentor your next guy. You're not bringing him in to try to mentor Gardner Minshew, take it to the next level. You're not bringing him in to cause drama and cause question marks about the young starting quarterback if his job is secure, and have him answer questions every bad game of if he's looking over his shoulder at Cam Newton. There's only a select amount of teams that could really afford to bring Cam Newton in, not have it be a distraction, and have it end up turning out well. I think it's the Steelers, the Titans, the Vikings, and the Seahawks. Now, Andy Dalton, on the other hand, I think he has more suitors. I think he'd be better fit to be a backup quarterback, and I think teams would be more adept at doing that. I think a team like the Jaguars would be interesting. You have Gardner Minshew. I think it'd be smart to bring in a veteran quarterback to at least show Gardner Minshew the ropes and at least allow him to have some wisdom and learn off of. I don't think that would work with Cam Newton. I think it would work well with Andy Dalton. And before we get any further, I want to at least try to squash this thought. Andy Dalton, I already said with Cam Newton, Andy Dalton is not going to the Patriots. He's not going. I know everyone, anytime there's a free agent quarterback available, they point to the Patriots. Man, Bill Belichick, there's no way he's going to play with Jarrett Stidham. They need a quarterback. People were freaking out that they didn't draft a quarterback in the draft. Bill Belichick is set on his quarterback position. We told you this earlier. When Tom Brady left, they already had his replacement in the wings. Jarrett Stidham is going to be the guy this year. They brought in Brian Hoyer as an insurance plan and someone to mentor Jarrett Stidham. They didn't bring in Brian Hoyer just because. They brought him in because he knew the system. He could help coach Jarrett Stidham. And God forbid, if Jarrett Stidham busts, they could put Brian Hoyer in and trust that he'll at least be competent with the offense and not just have it be, a disaster. You have to see what you have. They drafted him for a reason. This is the year, and Bill Belichick, I think, knows this. This is the year you see what you have. If Jarrett Stidham's the guy, it works out fine. You have your franchise guy for the next 10 or 15 years. If he's not, fine, you hit the reset button. Because guess what? Whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's Cam Newton, whether it's Jameis Winston, whether it's a quarterback in the draft, a lot of these guys are going to hit the free agent market next year. Andy Dalton is not signing a 2 or 3 year deal. Cam Newton is not signing a 2 or 3 year deal. Bill Belichick knows he can get these guys later on. You have to see what you have with Jarrett Stidham. This is the perfect opportunity to see in a guy you drafted if he can play or not. And not to mention, you're not going to bring in Andy Dalton and then who are you going to cut? You're not cutting Brian Hoyer because you need someone who knows the offense, especially in an offseason that is severely limited. You're not going to bring in a young quarterback who essentially is going to be a rookie this year, and Jarrett Stidham barely saw the field last year. You're not going to bring in a guy who doesn't know the offense as a veteran to come in and mentor him and be ready. Because guess what? That veteran's playing catch-up. It's not a coincidence they brought Brian Hoyer in. Brian Hoyer is the insurance policy, is a security blanket in case Jarrett Stidham isn't what they thought he was. So you need that there at all times, especially in an offseason that's weird and different than any other offseason we've ever seen in the NFL. The Patriots are set at what they have. It's going to be Jarrett Stidham the starter. It's going to be Brian Hoyer the backup. Andy Dalton is not going there in 2020. Cam Newton is not going there in 2020. No other quarterback is going to New England in 2020. 2021 might be a different story. Don't get me wrong. Again, I think this is a recalibration this year for Bill Belichick in New England. I said they'll have a down year. I think they will. Now, a down year for them could be 7-9 or 8-8. But it's not going to be 10-6 or 11-5 like they've used to. And they've gone essentially what feels like, every year for 2 decades. It could be, bumpy. It could be a big learning curve. But one way or another, Bill Belichick's going to answer a quarterback, and he's either going to have to, readjust and go get someone next year, or he's going to roll with Jarrett Stidham. And this is the year to figure it out. I think Bill Belichick will do that. So before we go any further, because I already see it on Twitter, the rumors, this is a perfect Patriots guy. He's not going to the Patriots. I would be shocked if he goes to the Patriots. So your thoughts, where do you think Andy Dalton or Cam Newton should end up? I mean, there's not a lot of homes for these players. I still think both can play. Cam Newton, obviously, the big question mark we have with him is his health. Will he be healthy enough to actually, play and get to the level that he was back in Carolina when his MVP year in 2015 or even before that? The last few years has been tough for Cam to stay on the field, and that's what's led to his lack of play. So I wonder, where is the spot? Where's the landing spot for him? He could go because I don't think it's that obvious. And Andy Dalton as well. Throw him in the mix. Where should Andy Dalton land? The two quarterbacks, they're going to have a job. It's just where. So I think either the Steelers, the Titans, the Vikings, or the Seahawks would be perfect for Cam. You can make the same case for Andy Dalton as well. So let's get your thoughts. We'll get where should Andy Dalton end up? Where should Cam Newton end up? We'll get your thoughts when we come back. And also when we come back, Eric Edholm, Yahoo Sports NFL draft reporter, will join us. Get some winners, get some losers, really close the book on the NFL draft for 2020 and discuss his process too, because all these draft guys are madmen, but Eric as well, already put out his 2021 list. Prospects to watch, some watch lists at each position, and put out a big board already for 2021. So we'll get his thoughts on how he already gets started for the next year. We'll do all that when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
And welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here until 11 a.m. on the East Coast. We appreciate you tuning in. And it's time to put a bow on the 2020 NFL Draft. No better person to do it with than the Yahoo Sports NFL Draft guru, someone who, if you especially follow on Twitter, some great NFL draft nuggets throughout the entire weekend. A very long weekend that it was. It is Eric Edholm. You can find him on Twitter at Eric_Edholm. Eric, thanks so much for getting us a few minutes this morning. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I've recovered a little bit. I was running low on gas there for a bit. Feels good now to look back on this thing.
I was just going to ask, speaking of gas, did you get enough sleep? But also, too, I see, I want to go forward to 2021 for a second here because, the draft just ends, right? 2020 is in the rearview mirror. We're talking about a few undrafted prospects. And here you are already putting out 2021 top prospects and watch list players. When do you sleep? And more importantly, when do you start, working on the next year?
Yeah, typical draft guy, I'm like those political reporters, right? Like the one election ends, they're already talking about the next one, But yeah, it was certainly a story that my editors were interested in having, and I compiled a list a little bit throughout the season. I probably had to do half of that kind of after the draft or whatever, but the obvious names like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, we know them. We know Travis Etienne and all the running backs who went back to school, but as I go throughout the season, I'll make a note of somebody and say, wow, this guy played well against a 2020 prospect I'm watching, and I'll kind of put him in a separate file and just sort of compile names. Like, I got to do a deeper dive on this guy. Other names come up in conversations with personnel folks, like, wait till you see this kid next year. He's great, blah, blah, blah. And here we are. So I just sort of funneled a lot of those names in there. But the top 25, I at least wanted to, pare down and give folks a little bit of a snapshot if we get a college football season of what they might be looking at.
Did you have like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to kind of take a deep breath after the 2020 draft ends and say, oh, all right, it all happened, we did it, and now, or is it just like, all right, the final pick, Mr. Relevance made, 2021, let's get those prospects out?
It's funny you say that. Actually, a quick personal story. I was finishing up my grades on Sunday morning. I had written all night Saturday and got through like 6 of the 8 divisions, and I was about 25 words away from finishing, and my wife came running into the house yelling. She'd accidentally snapped a branch she was cutting and hit herself in the eye. So right about when I was about ready to relax, she has this sort of horrible accident, and we had to take her to the ER. And of course, ER visits during a pandemic aren't the easiest thing.
Yes.
She's okay now.
Okay.
She's got a shiner, but yeah, it was like one of those, well, I'll probably sleep when I'm dead, I guess.
We're talking Eric Edholm, Yahoo Sports NFL draft reporter. So, Eric, I'm curious. Obviously, this was a different draft. Right? This is probably a draft we'll never see happen again, obviously, because of the pandemic. Coaches and players were all quarantined, and it was all virtual. Do you think this process, because basically it forced coaches and GMs and teams to basically rely on the film more than anything else, more than meetings, more than a pro day, more than the scouting combine, do you think this process helped coaches and teams basically not overthink some of these picks, not get enamored with the guy because he ran fast at a pro day or threw well at the combine? Do you think it basically simplified it and not helped, or I guess helped teams not overthink these picks?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think it also helps them kind of rethink their process a little bit and make they were forced to make some tough calls on how to, get people to be effective, right? And it involved obviously a little more tape work, some phone calls to get background information, finding out verified heights and weights. Some cases you couldn't do that. Any of those workouts that the kids put on videos. And again, I'm not trying to knock them. I understand they're trying to do whatever they can. They probably didn't amount to very much, but I do think there will be some conversations, and I believe that some of those have already happened amongst GMs, college scouting directors, the rest of the staff, trying to decide, what did we learn from this experience? What can we get rid of that we were doing before that amounted to busy work or, unnecessary labor or, bad allocation of resources? And I really think, this may only interest sort of the hardcore folks, but I really do think there's going to be an effect from that. You already saw some teams not sending people to the Senior Bowl, going to the Combine for a day or two, kind of cutting back on some of that travel before the virus really kind of kicked in. So, I think people have already had those conversations about what the effect might be, and it could involve a little less travel, a little more time at home, and just sort of a different approach because of what was, thrown at them this year.
Especially time at home, like you said, with these coaches on the road, traveling all the time, it could definitely be a positive for them and their families. I think it was cool to see, the families involved with the draft process, seeing them on camera, and the interaction. Because, like I said, this is a rare time that normally wouldn't be afforded to these families if everything was back to normal and we weren't in the middle of a pandemic. Eric, I'm curious. So let's get to a lot of grades here, right? You put out your draft grades for every single team, how they did, how good, bad. So I'm curious, well, let's go to the negative first. Obviously, the Packers, I think, are the easy team to kind of focus on and peg for their draft being maybe the worst. Is there another bad team, or I should say a team that had a pretty bad draft in your mind, or is it the Packers really the one that stands out the most?
Yeah, and let me put a little context on that. I gave them that poor a grade now because Jordan Love is no sure thing, right?
Right.
In 4 years, we could look back and say, what a masterstroke this was. What a brilliant pick it was. A.J. Dillon could be a fantastic power back to complement Aaron Jones. Joseph DeGuara could be the next Kyle Juszczyk. We could look back at this crop that they had and say it was pretty good. I think the immediate reaction is, boy, it's a 13-3 team coming off an NFC title game. Did they not think more short-term and less long-term? And I kind of applaud them for it. I know I gave them a low grade, but the grade reflects the unknown of Love. Another team that it just, they actually made some good picks, but it's the allocation of resources with their draft capital, and that's the Houston Texans. I liked some of the choices they made. I really did. Every year, they seem to kind of surprise me with how effective they can be with fewer picks. But, just because you're thrifty, just because you're smart with how you use the limited choices you have. I like Ross Blacklock and Jonathan Grenard. I think is going to be good. John Reed, they got in the fourth round. Isaiah Coulter. They had some pretty good picks. But when you're trading away DeAndre Hopkins at about 45 cents on the dollar, in my opinion, I can't give you a solid grade. And that does factor in. Just so people know, Hopkins going to Arizona for a second rounder, I am absolutely including that in their draft grade because it's used with draft capital. So if people are ever confused when they read it, just keep that in mind.
Let's hit on the Cardinals. I'm with you. I do love the inclusion of the trades because, like you said, you give her a second-round pick away for DeAndre Hopkins. That's like that is your second-round guy. That's who you get. So you absolutely include it. So I loved what the Cardinals did, to be honest. I like the Isaiah Simmons pick. And Josh Jones, I'm curious. He's a guy that you read mock draft, you read his profile. He's a fringe first-round guy, I would say, right? Maybe end of the first, early second. Is there a reason why you think he dropped to the third? And what do you think? What'd you like about, or did you like the Cardinals draft?
Yeah, I never personally viewed him as a first-round prospect. Although you're right. There were people putting him in as high as number 18 to the Miami Dolphins, and I just thought that was wild because, I don't know that he has a massive upside. I really don't think he's ever going to be a superior tackle in this league. But he does have 4 years of starting experience at Houston. Didn't go up against, a banner list of pass rushers, but for the most part played pretty well. Pretty solid week at the Senior Bowl. I think I had him as my 42nd overall player, 41st, something like that. So, the first round talk, the top 20 talk was absurd to me. The second round felt like his best landing spot from just a value standpoint. Third round, however, Now we're talking about a bargain. And those are the kind of investments that when you look back, you say to yourself, yeah, that's a smart play right there. And that's, look, they may not have anything special, but he played at Houston with a quarterback in De'Ara King who, style-wise, scrambling around and making throws and running and whatever, improvising, very similar to Kyler Murray. So I can understand how that translation would be, pretty seamless, even in an off-season where we may not, have pads on until training camp or something.
Talking to Eric Edholm, covers NFL Draft for Yahoo Sports. Obviously, so we talked about the Packers and their, interesting decision to take Jordan Love in the first round, let's say. Another team that made an interesting quarterback decision in the second round, Eagles took Jalen Hurts. So I'm curious because now, the talk of that pick is that the Eagles are trying to use him and basically have him be a Taysom Hill light and have him in that role, a do-it-all role, catch the ball, run the ball, throw the ball. From Jalen Hurts, just when you were, watching his tape at Oklahoma and Alabama, does he have the skill set? He's obviously athletic, but does he have the skill set to be a sort of a Taysom Hill, do-it-all kind of role where he can line up all over the field, catch the ball, run the ball, throw the ball? Does he have that kind of skill set to fit that role?
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, he played a little receiver at Alabama, when Tua was starting. Not a lot. I mean, I think he probably played about 24 snaps over a year or two or something like that. So they would move him around a tiny bit. We just didn't see much of it. I think he caught a couple passes against Missouri in 2018 before leaving. So, he's built like a running back, in my opinion, and he's a very good, tough, and fluid runner. I mean, I think if he had no ability to throw the ball, we'd be talking about Jalen Hurts as a running back prospect in the NFL. But, he's taken strides as a passer. We know that. I think he's still a project of some sort, but, to say that he has nothing to offer right away is I think, some people have said that, and I thought, geez, he's a good football player. And I understand it from a value perspective, too, in the sense that, you want to protect your best assets. 10 months ago, they made Carson Wentz this ginormous contract and everything. And, he's been hurt. I mean, he's had injuries. And you have to have a great insurance plan as your number two. So was it a little bit rich for their immediate needs? Sure. You don't take gadget guys in the round two. So that tells me that he has more value to them than just as this change-up kind of weapon. So, yes, I think he'll be factored into that role. But I also believe they view it as, if Carson goes down, our season was over before the draft. Now it may not be.
Eric, I'm curious because I was listening to your colleagues, Charles Robinson and Terez Paylor, do their podcast, and Charles brought up an interesting point when it comes to Jalen Hurts and his thinking. He was saying that maybe the Eagles are forward-thinking, that they see what Taysom Hill is doing with the Saints, and they want to take that to the next level. He was saying maybe in 5 years and 10 years, we could see what he called it a half quarterback become pretty popular in the NFL, right? You have a guy, college quarterback, who can run, pass, and catch, put him on the field in any position, and defenses have to adjust and don't know what he could do. Do you think that, especially when you're scouting college players, is that a skill set or, a possible role that we could see be filled more often going forward, do you think?
It's possible, right? I mean, it's got to be the right situation. If every team were to set out and try to do that, we wouldn't have enough talented players to fill those types of roles. I mean, look, would it possibly get an athletic quarterback from maybe a non-Power 5 school who is a little bit on the short side, maybe doesn't have a glitzy arm, but he's got a pretty good arm. Somebody on that second or third tier of NFL prospects, or fourth or fifth tier, whatever you want to say, could it get them an opportunity and give them sort of a different look? Yes. And it would maybe allow you to have a little more roster flexibility. Maybe you can use these guys on special teams like Hill does. Maybe there's another role for them where you can, kind of free up a little roster space with somebody who wears 3 or 4 hats. So it's possible. Absolutely. Especially with the way the college game has evolved over the last 15, 20 years, where those types of athletes are flourishing and being, sort of showcased. So I could see it. I just don't know that we're ever going to have that point where the vast majority of teams are going to be committing to that. It's going to take some real success for that role. Like Taysom Hill's great, but he's never thrown for a touchdown pass. There's still a limit to what he can do, in my opinion, or at least that we've seen thus far.
Talking with Yahoo Sports NFL Draft guru Eric Edholm. So, Eric, another quarterback, that I'll be honest. I was a lot higher on him than probably everyone else was for good reason. And that was Jake Fromm. I liked the way he played at Georgia. I thought, especially this last year, it was more the offense and the receivers than his fault for the regression. And I looked, too. I mean, he chased Jacob Eason out of Georgia. He caused Justin Fields to transfer, both those guys, and Jacob Eason that was drafted ahead of him. And Justin Fields, you have high on your big board and can go early next year. So I was definitely higher on Jake Fromm than a lot of draft experts and a lot of, obviously, teams. Are you surprised, though, they dropped all the way to the 5th round, though?
Yeah, I am. And obviously to go to the Buffalo Bills, where he's a clear number 2 and really won't elevate past that point, barring Josh Allen getting hurt. Now, of course, Josh Allen, a tough running quarterback who took some vicious hits last year. Again, similar to what we were talking about with Wentz. It's a nice little insurance plan. I don't think the Bills went into this draft thinking we're taking a quarterback. I think they saw the value and said, this guy's too good to be here. And you're right about it. I mean, look, as good as that offensive line for Georgia was, I felt like the scheme from James Coley came under fire for good reason. There was a lot of, kind of isolation stuff that really wasn't working. The receivers, you pointed out, weren't separating, were dropping passes. There were some route mix-ups. And really, Fromm had a 5-game stretch that really – put him down in the dumpster. It was 5 straight games under 50% passing. That's not the Jake Fromm that I watched earlier in his career. I mean, he wasn't a precise marksman, but he was somebody who usually put the ball in a pretty good spot. So, yeah, I think it was kind of wearing on him a little bit, and they were asking their receivers to do stuff that they probably couldn't do. So, combination of those things, him coming out, really ended up kind of hurting his process a little bit. You saw him at the combine. It was almost like he was trying to dispel the myth of him having a weak arm. He was gunning every single pass, a 7-yard slant. He was throwing like he was trying to put it through a brick wall. And it was, guess what? He was scattershot, so that hurt him too, I think. And it was just a tough offseason for him the way it worked out.
Interesting. We're wrapping up with Eric Edholm here. Eric, so I'm curious. Obviously, I think the Ravens and the Cowboys consensually 2 of the best drafts this past year. Is there another team that you really, really liked a lot and what the overall draft that they had?
Yeah, both those teams were great. I mean, if you want to pick somebody else, you could say Minnesota really got a nice haul as well. And, if you want to debate the wisdom of a 15-man draft class, I'm willing to engage in it just because, especially with the fact that they may not have that many roster spots open, even with some personnel losses this offseason. And next year, they're going to get at least 10 picks. They have some compensatory picks coming their way as well. So, they could have a dozen picks next year. Are they going to package all those and move up? That's a discussion for down the road, I think. But I just look at who they got. And, Ezra Cleveland at 58 was a nice value. I like Jeff Gladney and Justin Jefferson. I just thought it was like B-plus pick after B-plus pick until you got to James Lynch. I thought Lynch was going to end up being one of the biggest steals, sitting 130. He's not J.J. Watt, okay? Like, I've heard some people say that. Come on, he's not that good. But a really, really good player, a good foundational piece. And Kenny Willekes a couple rounds later, like those two guys, I understand the athletic benchmarks you want to see at certain spots. I understand that guys with shorter arms like those two have it a little tougher when they're trying to disengage. But, man, those are two good football players that they got. That deep in the draft, I thought their mining for talent was really well achieved. I like the approach. That's a good front office. Rick Spielman, George Payton. Good group of scouts up there, and I think they did the most with as many picks as they had.
Especially when you pick that many times, and the hit rate, even if it's 50%, you're still getting, 7, 8 great players on your team that can contribute. It is a numbers game to a certain point as well. So, Eric, we'll finish up with this then. So, obviously, the draft's over. All these rookies are in their respective teams. Is there an early leaning or a guy you like maybe that could win Rookie of the Year early on or have a nice breakout early start to his career?
Yeah, obviously it's a quarterback award, right? If the quarterback starts 14 or more games, they're going to have an excellent chance to be in the running as long as they're, not terrible and the only option a team has or something like that. And we saw Gardner Minshew start 12 games a year ago and play really, really well for stretches. So there's always the chance that somebody a little farther down the pecking order. But I would start with Burrow. Look, Andy Dalton gets released today, and that was the only question. Do they bring in Dalton as the sort of the first month of the season starter and then turn it over to Burrow? that question's been answered now today with this move. So obviously, if you start 16 games and AJ Green is signed, and they have Tyler Boyd, and they have John Ross, and they have Joe Mixon, I mean, look, there's some weapons there. Jonah Williams comes back. I still think going chalk here isn't the worst move in the world, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire landing in that offense, if he scores 13 touchdowns or something next year, 8 rushing, 5 receiving, or whatever, it wouldn't shock me to see him kind of catch people. Jonathan Taylor too in Indy. There's a couple backs who have great opportunities. I'm
so excited to see what Clyde Edwards-Helaire can do in Kansas City. I mean, you saw what he did in LSU. I think it's going to fit right in with Kansas City and just be another weapon for Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be almost a cheat code for that offense. Eric, we really do appreciate the time. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes. Hopefully, at some point between now and 2021, the NFL draft, you have some sort of breath to catch and relax a little bit. We do appreciate the time, and stay safe.
I thought you were going to say we hope we had football. That's more important.
Well, that's true, too. That is true, too. But, I mean, here in your schedule, I hope you catch a breath first, and then we'll have football.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And Eric Edholm of Yahoo Sports, NFL Draft Guru. Follow Eric on Twitter at Eric_Edholm. Great information, great nuggets there. And as you heard, I mean, a lot of great information. Eric is a great guy and very trustworthy when it comes to the draft. Like I said, he puts a lot of homework in. And already, 2020 draft comes and goes. Hours later, he's already looking at 2021. That's when you know a guy who loves what he does and puts all the time into his craft for sure. So, Eric, we do appreciate him giving us a few minutes here. So, when we come back, we'll wrap out the show. We've done the Quarantine Chronicles in the past, right? We gave you some funny stories. We had one incident with a police chase that involved a dog driving the car. There's one NBA player, that's really had his sense of reality warped during this quarantine. We'll discuss who it is and what he's been saying when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We do appreciate Eric Edholm again for giving us a few minutes and giving us some great insight on the NFL draft. I think it's what we're going to talk about on Monday. I'm very curious because I, for one, definitely, like many, question what the Eagles were doing in drafting Jalen Hurts. I thought it was a reach where they drafted him in the second round. I thought it was a reach drafting a backup quarterback that high. And also, I'm just personally not a big fan of Jalen Hurts' skill set and his game. I don't think that he's exactly NFL material. His anticipation. I think personally, I said on the show last week, or on Monday, I should say, I think he's personally Tim Tebow 2.0. A guy who looks to run first, throws to open windows. His anticipation is not great. We saw Tim Tebow had a little bit of success in Denver, but outside of that, not too much. I think that's what I would compare Jalen Hurts' game to. Maybe I'm a little more down on him than others, but that's what I would look at. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding Jalen Hurts going to Philly. But I am curious, and you heard Eric talk about it, there is a possibility that maybe this could be the wave of the future. I think Charles Robinson, when he talked about it at Yahoo Sports, was onto something to, we see the game change every 5, 10, 15 years, where it's going to look a lot different in 2035 than it does in 2020. So I wonder if that's the new wave now. That's the new idea of what NFL teams try to do in order to create an advantage over the defense. And as we see, too, the NFL is a copycat league. Whatever one team, whatever they do, and they have success with it, other teams are going to try to do that in some way or another. So I wonder if that's the new wave. Well, maybe we'll discuss that on Monday. Maybe is that the new way? Is that the new wave of what NFL football is like? Is that the new weapon that offenses could use to exploit defenses? So, but we'll finish the show with this because, like I said, usually the last segment of the show, for the most part, we haven't done the last few weeks. For the most part, is Quarantine Chronicles. Try to, leave you end the show with something to laugh about. And for the most part, just kind of bring up the wackiness that happens when people are isolated in their homes for weeks on end. And it's entered the NBA realm. And like I said, it's one player has really had his reality warped more than anyone else so far during this quarantine stretch. And that's Warriors forward Draymond Green. Draymond Green has been running his mouth these last few weeks, knocking this, boosting that, and really, really shooting a lot of arrows across bows and really putting his interesting opinions, we'll call it that, factual or not, out there. Let's just say, if you know Draymond Green or you're an NBA fan, you know Draymond Green doesn't lack self-confidence, doesn't mind telling you what he thinks. And let's just say these last few weeks, he's told everyone what he thinks. And obviously that includes Charles Barkley. Him and Charles have had a feud going on for months now, going back and forth. Even when the season was going on, they traded barbs throughout the media. So it's been interesting. So, of course, Draymond Green is going to go attack Charles Barkley. And one of the many comments that we'll read here that Draymond Green has said over these last few weeks, he claims and believes that Charles Barkley didn't have a bigger impact on the game than him, that being Draymond Green, and that Barkley is just jealous of him winning titles. Again, as you hear, they go back and forth trading barbs. It's been very entertaining for sure to hear Charles and Draymond go back at it. But now, at least the latest thing Draymond had to say is that Charles Barkley jealous. Draymond's had a bigger impact on the game than Charles Barkley, and all Charles is jealous of is that he won titles and Charles Barkley obviously didn't. But I'm going to read this quote next, and I think this is really where things get off the rails. And again, talk about having your sense of reality just warped completely. To live in another planet. So when Draymond Green was talking about the impact of the game, the impact of the Warriors, what they did, how they changed the game, this is what Draymond Green said. Quote, I think I changed the game of basketball with the help of Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry changed the game of basketball with the help of me. I think it was a match made in heaven. And then Klay Thompson, us three changed the game forever. Now, end quote. I'll just say this. We look at computers, right? I'm currently using a MacBook computer. All of us, especially working remotely, have had to rely on technology, on our computers in order to get work done. I'll just say this. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and myself, we changed computers forever. Us three were the biggest factors in the computer landscape as it is, and the biggest reason why we are so reliant on technology, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and myself. Computers wouldn't be what they were if it wasn't for us three. And technology as we know it wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for us three. Now, hint, one of us doesn't belong with the other. I don't belong with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Draymond Green doesn't belong in the same realm, in the same sentence of changing the game as Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Now, I'm not trying to take away or diminish what Draymond Green has done. He has carved out a great role for himself, and he is very important to that Warriors team. Right? He is, especially since a lot of us are watching The Last Dance, he is the Dennis Rodman of the 90s Bulls to what Draymond Green is in today's game to the Golden State Warriors during their dynasty and the run they had. But to think you, Draymond Green, you helped change the game of basketball, I'm not really sure where you get off on that and what you've done to change the game. Steph Curry by far changed the game. We talked about that last week. Steph Curry had just as much of an impact on changing the game as Michael Jordan did, right? When Michael Jordan was drafted, the entire game is about the big man, right? You can't win a title without a big man. The game went through the center. The center on your team was always the best player. If you didn't have a center, you didn't have a chance. Michael Jordan gets drafted ahead of two centers, ahead of two 7-footers, by the way, going number 3 overall to the Bulls. And he proved and he showed you can win titles. You could be the face of a franchise. You can lead a team without being 7 foot. He opened the door for a lot smaller players now, guards especially, to be the faces of teams and be the leaders of teams and help win titles despite, again, not being 7 feet tall. Steph Curry comes in, changes the game because now the mid-range game, the elbow jumper, driving to the hoop, that was the way you scored baskets. The three-pointer wasn't relied upon. Sure, it was a nice weapon to have here or there. It was not relied upon. Steph Curry comes in, teams up with Klay Thompson. The offense, Golden State runs. All of a sudden now threes are raining down left and right, and now teams are adjusting to where if you don't shoot the three, if you have a center that can't make a three, if you have players on the court that can't make a three, you're not effective. You're not winning a title. Steph changed the game, and you look at shot percentages and where they're located. In the 80s and the 90s compared to nowadays, the three-point line is lit up. The amount of players that are making threes is more than it's ever been. So Steph Curry 100% changed the game to the way it is now and helped shape it to where the three-pointer is massively important. So we have teams like the Rockets basically thinking every other shot is pointless unless it's a layup or a three. That's it. Elbow, get out of here. Mid-range, get out of here. Wing shot, get out of here. Ineffective. Inefficient. Layup or a three. Steph Curry was the catalyst behind that thinking. He helped change the game to the three-pointer became now the most important shot in basketball. And if you don't have it, you're in trouble. So, yeah, Steph Curry changed the game. Klay Thompson was right there with him because he was just knocking down as many threes as Steph was. And those two lived outside the three-point arc and made it so hard for them, so hard for teams to defend them, I should say, and spread the floor massively. I don't see Draymond Green being in that trio. I don't see when we're talking about catalysts for the Warriors, game changers for the Warriors, I don't see Draymond Green's name included in that. If anything, you have Kevin Durant in there for sure. That's a great boon. But it's Steph Curry and it's Klay Thompson. Like I said, I had much to do with changing computers and technology as Draymond Green has had in changing the game of basketball. And that, of course, Draymond did not stop there. He had to continue, had to run his mouth. And after including himself in changing the game with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, putting himself in that same sentence, putting himself in that same breath of those two guys, he also went on to say, quote, "We're the greatest team ever. Me and Curry would have effing destroyed Shaq in a pick and roll." End quote. Now again, Draymond's going unchecked for the most part. He can basically say whatever he wants. No one's really clapping back, except, of course, for the great Charles Barkley. Now I want to play this clip because I think it's very funny. I think Charles, for the most part, encapsulates what everyone's thinking about Draymond and really puts him in his place. He's on Coffee with Cal live show, and he was asked, of course, about Draymond Green's comments. This is Draymond Green, or I'm sorry, Charles Barkley puts Draymond Green in his place. It only Charles Barkley could do it. Take a listen.
I like messing with him. I like him. I think he's a good player. I like his personality. But I get annoyed when these guys who are born into money think they're successful. I told you, he's like the worst member of the boy band who doesn't realize he's standing next to Justin Timberlake when the girls are throwing panties at his head. He gonna get hit by some drive-by panties, but they're really throwing panties at Justin Timberlake. You see now I tell people, Draymond's a good little player, but without Kevin Durant, Klay, and Steph, he's just a good little player. And he's a good role player, and I like him too. But it annoys me when these guys start talking about, well, they won something. Yeah, I mean, there's some guys who won stuff who played with Magic and Bird, but they don't go around talking about how great a player they are.
Comparing Draymond to the worst guy in the boy band and getting hit by some drive-by panties is something that only Charles Barkley could use as a comparison. Very funny. But, I mean, to me, I'm with Charles on this. I think he's right. The Warriors are a great dynasty, a great team. I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm not even trying to diminish Draymond's role. He had a very important part, and you saw when he was ejected and kicked out of Game 5 and suspended, for Game 5, back in 2016 when the Cavaliers came back from 3-1 down to win their title over the 7-3 win Warriors. The series changed when Draymond was suspended. He has a legitimate impact on the floor, and he is the glue guy that keeps his team together. With that said, that doesn't mean you get to elevate yourself into immortal greatness. Doesn't mean you get to compare yourself with all-time greats already. Steph Curry's an all-time great as he's playing. He's still not even out of his peak yet. He's an all-time great. He's a top, right now, let's say he's a top 20 player conservatively, all-time in the NBA. That's only going to go up as he continues to play and continues to accumulate records and accolades. Draymond Green's not in that conversation. He's a great, important piece to the Warriors. He is exactly what Charles Barkley said. He's an important man. He's an important member of the boy band. He's integral to their success. But when the ladies are throwing panties to Justin Timberlake and Draymond Green gets hit with them, they're not meant for him. All these bouquets are getting thrown towards Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and Draymond's status is getting elevated because he's associated with this team, because he's on the same team as Kevin Durant and Steph and Klay. That doesn't mean he's in the same league as them. He's on the same breath as them. Well, let's not also pretend that Draymond Green, being this great player that he's claiming to be, having this great team that the Warriors have claiming and that he would destroy Shaq in a pick and roll. He was the one, let's not forget, that recruited Kevin Durant to come to the Warriors. When they won that 73 games, when they had that record season, they blew that 3-1 lead to the Cavaliers. Draymond Green, right after Game 7, right after they lost, called Kevin Durant and recruited him and basically begged him to come to Golden State. Not the other way around. Kevin Durant wasn't the one begging and making his case to join the Warriors. Draymond Green spearheaded this effort to get Kevin Durant come to Golden State because they realized we need him to win. So let's not pretend this Warriors team was all-time great. They were elite, partly because they had a three-headed monster of Steph, Clay, and Draymond. That is absolutely not the case. I don't think anyone's really saying that either, but Draymond just running his mouth again, especially now when we have nothing better to do. So all these outlets are going to have him on. He's going to say whatever he wants and make a lot of news. He's a core player. He's very important to the Warriors' success. But his best quality is being a pest. His best quality is getting underneath the skin of the opponent, getting them off their game. And right now, at least as he continues to run his mouth, his ability has never, ever been able to match the talk that he puts out there. Never. So that's all I want to say about Draymond Green. It's been weeks on end where he continues to run his mouth, when he continues to elevate himself and put himself into greatness. He's not. He's part of greatness team-wise, yes. Himself is not the reason why the Warriors won 73 games. He did not change the game of basketball, and he's trying to make himself more important than he truly is. So I'll end the show, and I just want to end this, of course. This is too perfect. So what was it? About an hour ago, right, top of the hour, I said the Patriots have no interest, or should have no interest, I should say, in Andy Dalton. There's no way that the Patriots should sign him or will sign him. I said, don't even waste your time saying that. The Patriots have their plan at quarterback. It's going to be Jarrett Stidham. It's going to be Brian Hoyer. Of course, as we end the show, I get an alert on my phone saying that the Patriots are now interested in Andy Dalton. It took all of 45 minutes for me to be wrong, all of 45 minutes for me to be proven wrong, I guess, by the Patriots. Now we'll see. That doesn't mean that they'll sign him. I don't think they will. I don't think they should. But at least right now, the update I see on my phone as we end the show is that the Patriots are interested in Andy Dalton. So got to make sure that at least we're checking ourselves here on the show and shows, what do we know? Absolutely nothing. So really do appreciate all of you tuning in on this Thursday. Really do appreciate Eric Edholm for making a few minutes here and joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Have a great weekend. Great weekend. Stay safe. Stay sane.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.